Hey everyone, and welcome back. My name is Sam.
And I'm Melissa.
I grew up in the FLDS community. It is a group run by Warren Jeffs, which I moved out of when I was 18 years old.
I was raised LDS. Sam and I have been married for 8 years now and have 2 beautiful babies.
Yes, we do. And we're very excited to be back with you today. We wanted to share some more information or some updates on the FLDS Church and specifically Warren Jeffs.
Yes, we came across this news clip from just a couple weeks ago talking about some of his latest revelations from prison. And we thought this would be a good video to react to and also kind of let everybody who's been following Sam's journey and our journey, let them know what's going on. If anyone would like to hear more about what it was like for Sam growing up in the FLDS, then please like and subscribe. And if you would like to donate to our cause of creating compassion for these communities and helping people be empowered to share their stories on our channel, then you can hit the donate button below or go to our website of growingupinpolygamy.com and donate there. Thank you all so much for all of your support.
Thank you for in advance. Thank you for all of your support.
Okay, here we go.
It's not what they actually want to do. They don't feel like they have a choice. There is no consent when it's coerced.
A prison revelation from polygamist leader Warren Jeffs is reigniting fears surrounding the fundamentalist LDS Church.
Some say families are being split up and marriages within the group may soon resume.
Fox 13 News reporter Ben Winslow has more.
Fundamentalist LDS church leader Warren Jeffs may be in prison, but he's apparently still very much in charge. A recent edict issued by Jeffs is alarming some former members of the church.
I have family members who have had their children taken away within the last few weeks. People are being told they're no longer worthy enough to have their children.
This document was put out in the community. It calls for prayers for Jeffs to be released from prison, but also asks for letters with information about his followers, including photos and details about their families. The document calls for some who've been ousted to return, calling on fathers to gather up their children, while Jeffs later suggests those who have sinned will be cast out. He proclaims that marriages will soon take place for those deemed worthy.
There are people being...
Sorry, before we go any further, I really wanted to kind of read some of these to you, babe, and you can tell me how realistic or if these are things that you had heard growing up. So
yeah, this is so. I mean, I knew that he was still very much in charge. People will visit him. He will share with them these so-called revelations that he has, and then they would go back to the community. I believe it's his daughter at this point is kind of sharing those messages. But anyway, I knew he was very much involved, but this is brand new information. I had not heard that marriages and those types of things may start again.
Yeah. So reading some of these quotes. So pray that Warren Jeffs will go free and he can meet you in your congregation soon. All peoples who desire to be members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I can't read the bottom part, but I know that you said like when he first got put into prison, you guys were told that often, right? To pray for him, and you believed that he was going to be released.
I believe it's been a very common thing ever since he was put in prison, that the people of the community will pray, they will fast all the time for his release, because they believe that they still believe now as much as they ever have that one day he will, I guess, God will break the prison walls and he'll walk out and be a part of their community again.
Another another thing that I feel like is interesting on that as well is the fact that he calls it the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is the mainstream LDS church. He doesn't refer to himself as fundamental.
Right.
And is that common? Did you guys always just call yourself the full like church, or did you call yourselves FLDS?
No, members of the church don't really refer to it that much as the FLDS church. You will hear them calling themselves the fundamentalists of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints sometimes, just to set them apart from the mainstream LDS church. But they do consider themselves members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as well. Just obviously
the fundamental version.
The fundamental version, yeah.
Yeah, I just thought that was interesting reading that. I was like, wait a second. The other quote, every letter should have a picture and your birth line and your age and what he should know about you, to know about you and your family line being pure priesthood, progenitors. I believe is how that word's pronounced. But
Hmm.
what do you think he's at? Like, do you think it's just been so long that he probably doesn't even know what everyone looks like anymore? And so
I don't even want to think about why he's asking for these things. My assumption is that he just wants to remain in control and be able to dictate who gets to be with who at what age, and just kind of remain in charge of all of those types of decisions. But yeah,
and what he should know about you to know about you and your family line. So everybody's in charge of like claiming whether or not they are good priesthood holders.
so this is
But he's a prophet.
right. This is where it gets interesting. Is I wouldn't have expected this, because he has always claimed that he received direct revelation from God about his members of the church.
Yeah.
So the fact that he needs you to tell him about it, right, that kind of does away with that idea of him receiving direct revelation from God of who should marry who and when and all of that. So this is very interesting.
Yeah. Okay. The next one was fathers desiring restoral can gather with their birth children and only who was their wives on earth, with the birth children present in family groups, classes in your several family homes where they dwell.
I don't even know what he's saying here, honestly.
So you can gather with, here, I need to bring this up so everyone else can see it too. So fathers can gather with their birth children,
Right.
and only who was their wives on earth.
And only who was their wives on earth.
With the birth children present in family group classes in your several family homes where they dwell. So that's very interesting that he clarifies about the wives on earth and the fact that they can gather with their birth children. I'm very curious, like, if they want to be with their kids, go back with your kids and like, wait for me to say what to do from that point. But I don't really fully understand with the birth children present in family groups. Yeah, It's interesting, right?
Yeah. So
if anyone has any insight, put it in the comments of what they would mean by the only who is their wives on earth.
And I mean, my assumption, or the thing I think about automatically coming from there, is wives on earth, meaning the ones that you were assigned to for this life only, not the ones that you were sealed to for time and eternity. So
that's where my mind went too. But that's
my assumption. It's hard to understand why he would request that only the ones that were the wives on earth, not the ones that you were sealed to. I'm not sure.
Yeah, interesting. And then I, the Lord, loveth all, yet I cannot allow sin living to dwell among my church membership any longer. Once again, automatically putting the blame on people, like the people are living in sin, the ones that he's allowed to be even with their families anymore. Zion meaneth the pure in heart souls. Well, something with faithful.
The subtitles are
with faithful and true, living by the word of Jesus Christ. So he's not going to allow people living in sin to dwell among the church membership.
That's nothing new. People have been being sent away from this community for years now because they were so-called sinning or not righteous enough.
But what that's going to mean, because at this point, he's already separated and torn apart so many families that it's like, it's going to be interesting to see, what does he mean by he's not going to allow them anymore? So is he just going to get more strict on everyone? Is he going to separate?
This is how I see this going. I see this going as families come together and they gather up their children, they gather up their whatever earthly wives mean, and they meet in a place where at that point, I don't believe is he still allowed to make phone calls?
I have no idea.
I know he was for quite some time allowed to make phone calls even from prison, which is very interesting that was allowed or is allowed. I'm not sure if it still is or not, but either way, either himself will call or someone that he assigns will call or show up to these homes, and they will assign certain boys or girls to get married, and that will most likely be done in secret. And any one that he feels he doesn't want to be a part of the church, or maybe there are too many men for the women to go around, some of the men will be sent away
Mhm.
or forced out of the community and will be blamed for not being righteous enough. So I
But he
think
needs their pictures first because he can't remember who everyone is.
of course, yes. And then of course, then he will make a decision in his prison cell on what should happen to these families, which the fact that this is still going on
This many years later, this many years later.
yes. And to think that there will be families, and according, I don't know for sure what her name is here on the video, sharing her experience with some of her family members being sent away.
Mm-hmm.
But
They're still listening.
Sounds like the families are still being torn apart.
Yeah.
After all these years. It's still happening.
There was one more quote real quick.
Sinned will be cast out. He proclaims that marriages will
There we go. Sealings in celestial plural marriage unions will take place for those the Lord revealeth to mortal keyholder Warren Steed Jeffs, who is worthy. Yikes. So I mean,
it looks like marriages will. He will
marriages
start
are going to happen.
doing marriages again, or sealings as they would call them. Celestial plural marriages.
And for him to still like to call himself the mortal, when they talk about a key holder, it refers to priesthood keys.
Yes.
So for anyone who's like, what's a key holder? Or like, why are they worried about what keys he's holding? Those are considered priesthood key holder. And they believe that he's the only one that has the keys to be able to have celestial marriage happen. So,
which basically stating that he has the power given to him from God to perform God's work on earth is what he's trying to say here. And claiming to be the prophet of God is also claiming that you have all of that power.
Yeah. And that also, and he makes sure to throw in there that he's worthy of that, which
right.
Just great. Anyway, we will continue on.
Just in case any of you were doubting, I'm still worthy.
I just wanted to pause real quick there so that we could read all those quotes. So we'll keep going on with this.
Soon take place for those deemed worthy.
There are people being called back to their families that have been faithful and waiting for this call for 10, 15 years or longer, and they're elated. And then I'm hearing some just call and get their family back together, and then they are sent away again within a week of gathering their family up. And then I'm also hearing people that have said, thank you, but no thank you. I've moved on with my life.
Alina Darger runs a nonprofit that works with people in polygamous communities. Her organization takes no position on their beliefs, but tries to offer resources. She says the edict has brought up concerns for some about what might happen next, and Cherished Families is already getting calls.
We're going to need housing. We're going to need, food and emergency supplies. And it just kind of, it's always a need that's evolving, but we'll see what goes on.
Some ex-members tell.
I think it's awesome. I've never heard of church families. Have you?
No, I have not.
If they're getting calls,
this is something we need to look into.
Yeah, but if they're getting calls, it means that obviously people from the community are aware of them. So that's super awesome that they know about it and that they can make those phone calls. And that might need to be our Christmas fundraiser this year, is for Cherished Families.
Yes, that's a good idea. And it's also interesting and good to hear that some families are just saying, actually, no, I'm good.
I'm good.
I'm not going to follow along with this anymore.
And that's also interesting because it means that the families probably, it just shows how little Warren Jeffs knows, because he's asking for pictures. He's asking for family profiles, basically. And if he's calling upon people to try to give them the direction, and people are like, I've already moved on with my life, no thanks.
Mm-hmm.
You got to wonder if that's going to have a bigger effect on the church as a whole, too, because he might think that more people are listening to him than what actually are.
Oh, I'm sure.
So anyway, well, keep going.
Tell Fox 13 News they are worried about families being split apart again and marriages resuming.
I think we're going back to extreme, you're in or out, and where people are going to be cut off and the children are being gathered up.
Jeffs is serving a life sentence in a Texas prison for child sex assault related to underage marriages. Many of his followers have scattered across Utah and the country, abandoning Hilldale and Colorado City for other places. It's a result of political and prosecutorial pressure on the FLDS Church. The Utah Attorney General's office tells me it is aware of Jeffs' latest edict and is looking into it. but wouldn't say any more than that.
Laws are useless if they aren't enforced. And so far, nobody has been really willing to actually enforce the law.
Ben Winslow, Fox 13 News, Utah.
It's really interesting that she talks about the fact that there are laws in place that aren't being
Enforced.
Mm-hmm. Right? You know, polygamy it's been lightened up on as far as the charges against it. That was recently. And I'm very curious if that's all she means, because polygamy is a super hard thing to prosecute anyway. Because do you really want the government tearing apart the families? Right? Like Warren just already doing that. Do you want the family? Like, I feel like it's so tricky with the law, if that's what she's referring to.
Yes. Oh my goodness. It's a very tricky and very difficult position to be in for both those that follow Warren Jeffs and those that are trying to enforce the laws, because it's one of those things where for those that do follow Warren Jeffs, they only want to listen to him for guidance. So if someone from the outside comes in and tries to claim certain things, or they are trying to help them, they're going to look at it as attacking them, not helping.
Yep.
So it's a very tricky position to be in for either party here.
Yeah, for the state of Utah. Yeah, I don't envy having to try to figure out that whole situation. But
what we can do is, like you said, try to
help these organizations
to create more outreach, and for those that are willing to look elsewhere and do need some help, to make sure we're there to help them when they do.
Absolutely. So again, if you want to hear more of what it was like for Sam to grow up in polygamy, please like and subscribe. And if you want to donate to our cause of creating compassion for these communities and creating a platform where people can share their stories, then you can donate below or at our website at growingupinpolygamy.com.
Thank you all.
Thanks, and we'll talk to y'all soon.
We'll talk to you soon.